It is now April, and that means we've gone through 3 full months of music. Some of it pretty good, some of it not as good. And honestly, a lot of it we missed because there's just so much music that drops every day. And, clearly you're going to miss some things. But that's where I come in. I'm here to tell you some of my favorite projects of the year that you may have missed, you may not have missed, but they're my favorite projects so far. So, welcome to the Bar for Bar podcast. And this week, I'm talking about my favorite projects of 2022 so far, or Q1, or whatever long, exasperated title I want to go with. If you're new here, welcome. I know a lot of you probably subscribed because of my reactions or my breakdowns or my reviews. So this video is a little bit different in that sense. But these podcasts I've been doing pretty much, I try to do it at least every week, but I get busy or I don't have anything to talk about, so it ends up being every other week. Been doing this since 2018. And, I usually talk about stuff in hip hop, stuff going on, just things that don't really fit into one review or breakdown video. So, hopefully you stick around and enjoy these random ramblings I have. So, getting back on topic, we'll start with January. January started off, pretty strong with Earl Sweatshirt's album, Sick. This dropped, I think, the middle of January, and I really enjoyed it. This project is definitely different from some of the things that Earl had done in the past, and the subject matter as well is a little bit divergent, not a whole lot. I mean, he does address some of these issues on previous projects as well, but with this project, what he did and or at least what I feel he did, and I mentioned in my review and I still feel this way, is that this is very much just a pandemic album. So what that means to me is, or at least in the context of this album, is that Earl was just observing what was going on. And the album is essentially just his observations. So, clearly there's a lot going on between COVID and all the Black Lives Matter protests and among other things. So, that affects people. It just makes sense. Especially for someone like Earl who's just, he's the type of person that just absorbs what's going on around him. And I feel like he's very introspective as well. So whatever he sees going on, he may try to apply in his life and see like how that relates. But this album was good. I feel like it definitely encompassed a lot of the feelings a lot of people had during that time. But it also doesn't go to the point where it's beating you over the head with it. Now, a lot of themes are definitely around what happened during the pandemic, but you could just listen to this outside of that context and it'll still be a pretty solid album. I do know a lot of people didn't really care for this album. They didn't really say it was bad. Like I think everyone's basically saying like it's good or pretty good. Like no one's saying it's terrible. And the reason they're not feeling it as much is because it is a bit of a departure, like I alluded to, in terms of sound. The sound is definitely more stripped back and less abrasive. But to be fair, this is the sort of sound that I felt Earl was going to go towards eventually, just because of the people that he surrounds himself with. Like, I mean, he's around the Alchemist all the time. He's with Boldy James. Like, these are people who have a more slow flow and more. They're typically known for stripped down beats or drumless beats. So this was something that I expected. The rhymes are still really good. I think the thing that a lot of people noticed is that Earl is very clear here. Like his voice is very clear and he's getting his points across very clearly. So that also allows this to be one of his most accessible projects in recent years. Because Feet of Clay and some rap songs were hard to get into, to say the least. But once you got into them, you really liked them. Continuing on in January, we have Ian Kelly and Hitmaker Dot with Long Way Home. Now, Ian Kelly, if you aren't aware, is from the Bay. And just by default, have to like it. But this project, it's 4 tracks. It's a quick little EP. It's like 12 minutes long, and it's just great all the way through. It's something that I can just easily throw on and just vibe out to. And every track, especially the ones with a hook from Jane Hancock, just gets stuck in my head, especially Down Slow, which is now just in my head, and it's going to stay there for probably the next couple of days until I listen to the song on repeat. But it's a great project. It's a quick listen. Definitely check it out. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. I didn't get to review it just because I was kind of busy at the time, but it's so good. This brings us to February, which also started off really strong at the beginning of the month with Saba, who dropped Few Good Things. It had been a little while since he dropped Care For Me. I think that dropped in 2017 or so. So, this was highly anticipated by everyone. Like, everyone kind of acknowledges it's like, yeah, Saba's good. He's a really good rapper. So, anytime you have a really good rapper, you just kind of wait for the next release, right? We did get a few songs in 2020, which I personally thought were going to lead to an album, and I really enjoyed all those songs. Like, they all sounded good. To be fair, though, looking back, now they do sound a little bit disjointed and probably would not have fit in an album, but that's fine. But with Few Good Things, when it finally came out, or when it finally started rolling out, I was very excited. Because Saba is one of those people who has a lot of storytelling in his rhymes, and this album goes pretty much into that, like, just right off the bat. And even, like, just the whole album in general is telling a story. The easiest way to put it, like, without just going off on, like, a whole tangent about it, is that it's basically a story about Chicago, telling of him growing up, his family, and how they, settled down in Chicago. There is a short film associated with it, which I highly recommend watching, because it's essentially, you could think of it as an extended music video. And by having it just basically be that, you can kind of imagine what's going on in each of those songs. And it's just done very well. Like, how some music videos are just whatever, they're just going off on some random stuff, which, you could just do for any song. With the short film, it really goes into it and expands on each song, and it makes it more fleshed out in my mind. So if you haven't listened to the album, or if you have, definitely watch the short film as well. Also in February, we got a couple albums from Roux Shankle and DJ Basta titled Roux and Deluxe Edition. Both of them are really good, but I've spent a lot more time with Roux specifically, and it's so hard to explain Roux, but really what you need to do is just listen to them. These beats are just they're so vibey, as lame as that word sounds. Like, it's both projects are a vibe. I did say I spend more time with Roux rather than Deluxe Edition, and that's just because I feel like it was a bit more complete. I mean, Deluxe Edition is literally a deluxe edition with more songs on it, which isn't a bad thing. Those songs are still really good, but Roux itself seems like a very complete project on its own. Honestly, I would just recommend listening to it, because I can't explain the variety of songs and sounds that you hear on it. I will say, though, that every time that I've driven someone around and had it playing, they enjoyed it. And they were just like, oh, who's this? And it's Roux. Continuing on with the Bay Area theme, since Roux is also from the Bay, we have Bledsoe, who did a project with Noble titled The Rich and Saucy. Now, this project is different from some of the things that I've heard from DB in the past, in the sense that it's a bit more experimental, and it's like he's not afraid to take risks with this project, and it paid off, I feel. Like, Yeah, you may not enjoy every song on this project, but I think there is something for everyone here. And like I said, he's not afraid to take risks and experiment. Like there are some songs that I just didn't really care for on it, like Nobody. Like it's just that's the sort of sound that I'm not really into, but I know a lot of people are. So definitely check that one out as well. It's also a really short EP. I think it's like 20 minutes long or so. So definitely a quick listen. Now we have reached March, and March has the most projects that I've enjoyed so far this year. And I don't know if that's because March was more recent and I've just have all these albums in my mind, or if they're just way better, or if there's just more good projects here. But we start off March with Monty Draper's Communion, another Bay Area native. It's honestly, I had listened to it so much when it came out, and actually all of March. Um, like I have, if you have Tidal, it tells you how many streams you've given to a particular artist, and for Monty, I've listened to this album way more times than anything else in March, and that's not even including the early listening link that I had for it. Like, there's a good maybe 30 to 40 more streams aside from what Tidal said, and it was crazy like how far ahead it was. But it's just a really good project overall. You get such a variety of production. A lot of it is from Kevin Allen, but you do get a track produced by Rex Life Raj, and it's all good. Like, it's very concise and it gets the points that it wants to make across, but like it's just good. I really do want him to expand on it and make it a proper album, because as an EP, yeah, it may feel like, oh, these tracks are disjointed, like in terms of what they're trying to get across, but each track still flows well into the next one, and it's just enjoyable overall. Like, it's a great project. I mean, there's a reason I had it streamed so many times. Like, just throw it on. You'll see what I mean. But there's also other projects that came out in March that I really enjoyed. And the one that was really close in running to my most streamed project of March was from King Crooked and Joell Ortiz, titled The Rise and Fall of Slaughterhouse. Now, I'm not going to get super into the whole Slaughterhouse drama, because that's kind of been done to death. And I think everyone's done with it, especially Crook and Joell. Like, they don't really want to go into that anymore. But even aside from all that Slaughterhouse drama, it's a really good album. Like, there's just so many good raps on it. Like, you already know that Joell and Crook are going to bring in some of the best lyrics that you can see, like, hear out there, because they're obviously part of Slaughterhouse, but also they did the project Hard back in 2020. And it's just, I feel that if you take all the Slaughterhouse stuff out of this, like, or if you go into this without the whole mindset of, oh, this is a Slaughterhouse project or they're dissing Slaughterhouse, you still get really good rhymes. Like, honestly, a lot of these tracks you can take out of context and they'll still be good. Like, yeah, they address Royce and Joe, whatever, but even without knowing what was going on, like, you still feel the impact. And I think that's great. This brings me to one of my favorite albums this year, and it's honestly, a lot of these projects are going to be on my list by the end of the year, but this one almost certainly will be on it. Denzel Curry, Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. That album, it's so good. Denzel is one of those people who takes his time with a major project, and it generally pays off. The last major project he had was Taboo, and that dropped in 2018, I think. So, it's been 4 years, which for a rapper of Denzel Curry's caliber and popularity, that's a little bit long. So what he does in the meantime is drops other projects to hold the fans over. So he dropped Zoo, and he dropped Unlocked and Unlocked 1.5. Essentially projects that, they're still really good, but they're not at the same level as these big conceptual albums. And I mean, that makes sense. You're not, like, if you're making these conceptual albums, it's going to be really hard to do it every year or so. Like, it's not easy. But this album is great. I did recently review it, but generally, I feel that the whole title of it is that he's calmed down. Like, he's found a place of zen. And now he's, like, looking to the future. He's taken in everything that's been going on around him, which, again, could be considered, like, this could be considered a pandemic album, but a little bit different. Like, the pandemic affected Denzel in a way that he's just, like, looking into himself, and he found himself, or he's, like, essentially opened his third eye sort of vibes. So it's a really good listen. It is a departure from the sounds that you may know Denzel for. I remember I was talking to one of my friends who he said, I don't know if I like this album, because he went to, like, his first time listening to it was in the gym, and he was expecting a very hard-hitting, banger-filled album, and then he got real life shit, which, I get it. You expect something more aggressive from Denzel, but especially if you're going into the gym, but I still think it's a really good album. The last major album that just snuck in, in Q1, although technically it released April 1st, but the original date was slated for March 31st, is from Sadistik and No, Bring Me Back When the World Is Cured. This album is great. Sadistik is one of my favorite rappers, and No is one of my favorite producers, and the last time they came together for Phantom Lens back in, like, 2015 or so, it was great, and I loved it. But this album just takes it a step further. The production on this is amazing, and it's honestly probably the most unique production out of everything else I've listened to or listed here. Like, if you listen to The Cunning Linguists, which is the group that No was part of, that's the sort of production that you're getting here. Like, or at least that's the closest thing I can compare it to. And it's unique. It's great. Like, honestly, every time Sadistic drops, it's always different, but, it's like it's not different in the sense that, like, oh, it's super stark and, like, oh, this is I didn't like this one because it's so different from the other one. It's like a slow transition. It's almost like he's going from the more aggressive and, I guess, sad boy raps to more artsy sad boy raps, as bad as that makes it sound. But for real though, this was a really good project, and I can't wait to listen to it some more. And honestly, I can't wait to see him in Oakland in a couple weeks. It's gonna be great. But that about wraps up the projects I really enjoyed. There are a couple other ones that dropped in March that I want to at least acknowledge because they were good. I just didn't listen to them enough yet. And those are from Elzai, titled Zeitgeist. Elzai's Detroit rapper. He's been in the game for a while now. And I only listened to this album a couple of times, but it's really enjoyable. It was solid production and just top tier bars. To be fair though, that's not for everyone. Like, these just top tier bars over really pretty beats, essentially. So that's why I haven't really returned to it as much, but also I just had other things on my plate. I had to check out Denzel and Sadistic, but it's really good, honestly. If you want a review for that, let me know. My boy Eric from Hip Hop Babies hit me up about a review, so we'll see if we can get something going. The other project that I want to address for March is Larry June and Jay Worthy's project, Two Peas in a Pod. I haven't listened to this enough, but I enjoy Larry June, and it fits the vibe. Like, Larry June is one of those artists I can just throw on when I'm driving or just doing anything and just vibe out to, because it's just almost always the production is what gets me, but also he just sounds so smooth on everything. And then him working with Jay Worthy is just great because Jay Worthy's pretty solid as well. But yeah, those are the couple that I wanted to mention from March. Just I haven't listened to them enough, but they were still good. Now we have some albums that I just either had high expectations for or I just didn't care for as much. Starting with Corday's album From a Bird's Eye View. I don't know what it was. Like, I think I really enjoyed it off of the first listen, and then the second listen got less interesting, and the third got even less interestinger. Like it just started to drop off for me, and I don't know what it is about it. Like Corday is not a bad rapper by any means, and the production was really good. It's just, I guess he couldn't hold my attention long enough. As bad as that sounds, like it's still a good project, and I mean, there's a handful of songs that are still good on it, but it's weird. I don't know what it is exactly about it. But yeah, that was one of them. The other ones that I want to bring up are going to be interesting, to say the least, because they're projects that I feel like if you've been following this channel for a while, you may be surprised to hear of. Or, well, you may have kind of figured it out as I was listing off these projects that I did like. But Conway the Machine, God Don't Make Mistakes. I don't know what it is. Like, I was very excited for the album. I even really liked the mixtape that he put out prior to the album. But for some reason, the album itself, I only listened to like 3 times, and that was it. Now, I don't know if it's because I got everything I needed out of it, and I was like, all right, cool. Because kind of like when you go and watch a movie, and you're like, all right, that was a good movie. I don't need to see it again, but I enjoyed it. Like that's kind of the vibe that I got from that Conway album. Like he tells you a lot, and he goes through a lot, and it's probably one of his most, I guess, personal or introspective albums. But something about it just didn't really make me want to return to it as much. I don't know what it is. And it's interesting because I'm trying to think about it, like why that is, but there's just something missing to me. Like I've been a really big fan of Conway and Griselda, but I don't know, something's just missing right now, and that feeling continues on with Benny's album Tana Talk 4. Like Tana Talk 4 was good. It was definitely a good project, but again, it just didn't hold my attention as long. I think the biggest thing for me was like the lead single, Johnny P's Caddy. Like that almost felt like a misdirect for the album, because you get a very soulful beat and a really great feature from J. Cole. I mean, obviously Benny's gonna do his thing too, but it just kind of it almost went back into the typical Griselda format. Like it wasn't bad, but it's just like maybe I was expecting something else, and this is what I got. But I'm also comparing it to Tana Talk 3, which was amazing. So, that's entirely possible. I think a lot of other people may feel the same way. Like, because I felt that way with the Plugs I Met too. Like, I really enjoyed the original Plugs I Met, but then 2 just kind of like, eh. So maybe it's just like if you're going to have a sequel to an album, your expectations are just really high, and it just falls off for you. But something that I was really realizing as I thought about these 2 projects is that I actually really enjoyed West Side Gun's projects more than these 2. Now, is that because West Side Gun didn't really, or well, I don't know if he did, but maybe he didn't have as much say in these projects? Like, because with every Griselda project prior, at least for the most part, I believe, West Side Gun executive produced it. So West Side Gun is essentially like the brain of Griselda you could think of, like at least artistically, because he's just really good at picking beats and sequencing. He's just a really good executive producer. Like he ARs perfectly. Like I'm thinking back now and I'm like, yeah, I didn't have Hitler Wears Hermes 8 A or B on my top 10 last year, but both those projects were better than what Benny and Conway had put out. And that's just weird. Like it, like, because for the longest time, I didn't put West Side Gun up that high, but like, because you hear a guy yelling, going do 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 do, and just doing ad libs all the time, and like you're just kind of more focused on the rappers like Benny and Conway. But then when you take that away from Benny and Conway, it's like there's something missing. Like it's hard to explain, but I don't know if anyone else feels that way. But that's just something I was thinking about, and it's weird. I felt relevant because Benny and Conway should be mentioned on my list. Like if you asked me like 2 years ago, and if they had put out these projects 2 years ago, maybe like they would definitely be on this list, and I would not stop talking about them. But now I'm just like, feels like there's something missing. Either that, or I've just grown out of the Griselda sound. I don't know. But that about wraps up all my thoughts, I think. It's almost the 30-minute mark, so we'll end it there. Let me know in the comments below what you think of my favorite projects. I mean, opinions are opinions, but, I'm curious to see what you guys think. And if I've missed anything or just forgot another album, like, let me know, because like I said, there's so much music that came out. You can't listen to everything. It's hard. You can't listen to everything and form an opinion on it. It's very difficult. But yeah, let me know what some of your favorite projects are that dropped this year. Also, if you stuck around, why don't you like and subscribe if you haven't already? It really helps out. With all that said, thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.